everyone. Welcome back to another exciting and inspiring episode of the Inspired Life Vancouver, where we have been bringing you amazing locals who are making a positive impact in their realm, in their industries. Joining me today is someone who has been entertaining you for a few decades, bringing us great Canadian television. He's garnered over 40 industry awards as a writer, director, screenwriter. He's a powerhouse, a real Canadian talent. It's my honor and pleasure to welcome on the Inspired Life Vancouver, Chris Haddock.
Yay, I'm inspired to be here.
Yes, I'm very inspired to be sitting next to you.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm always glad to kind of talk about Vancouver and all the people that I was just talking with a bunch of people about how much the city has changed, and for the industry that we're all in, the media industry, everybody's kind of up in the air a little bit, a little nervous, in a nervous enough industry, particularly for people in front, performers in front of the camera and stuff. It's really unusually, I think, anxious time. For everybody, and I think that, and it has been for me at certain times too, because it's an industry in which nothing is guaranteed, and the job you have today might be canceled tomorrow, or it's insecure for some people. In front of the camera, behind the camera, it's a little different. Everywhere, it's a little different. But I've survived by, I think, in the low periods in between gigs, early in my career. I was able to amuse myself and keep the creative juices going by playing some music and do it in something that I get an immediate feedback from. And I think that one of the tortuous things that's going on in the film and TV industry right now is that, first of all, it can often take a long time after you get a green light and you've been approved for getting a gig or anything, getting the show up, however, before the actual picture starts shooting. And then any number of things can happen to further delay it, and you can be in this state of limbo for quite a while. And that insecurity can only double or treble when the industry itself is not sure yet what direction it's going to go in terms of how many jobs might be changing, and how technology will be perhaps providing some new jobs and eliminating quite a number of old ones. Because as it usually happens, any new technology that's introduced into the industry, or any industry, does result in a lot of job change, at least, not necessarily job losses, but generally certainly some skills and some crafts lost all along the way. So I know the people I'm hanging with, and everybody's is remaining optimistic. And I think that you can see that strain on them, is to simply trying to keep up the front because as a creative person, it's very easy to doubt your own abilities in a changing market, because often you don't get any real feedback on how people are receiving your work. Like, as a television performer, somebody might say, some friends or family or people that in your circle, you might eventually get an award or something. People on set or director, people around you might say, "That's fantastic. You're really giving a good performance." Generally, that doesn't necessarily happen, and it certainly doesn't always travel down through crew or anybody, because people do not necessarily have the opportunity to find out how they're doing and have frank discussions about where they're at or how people are feeling about the audience is feeling. A lot of people don't get that. So you're often sort of performing blind into a something that doesn't give you feedback. So you're in a very difficult, or the feedback might take a couple of years or a year before something gets there, and then it feeds back, and then it doesn't open, or it gets delayed, or it ends up on Netflix, and nobody's seeing it, or it's gotten lost in the shuffle, or whatever can happen. All those things can happen. And I've been striving for a very long time to try to get into a kind of filmmaking, television making situation where that loop of feedback can speed up a little bit. I'm not saying shoot anything quicker, actually the opposite, but I'm aiming for stuff where most of the work that is done in creating a television show is number one, begging for permission, begging for it to begin, begging it for it to continue, and begging for them not to, kibosh your casting decisions. So you're always out. It's an asking permission thing. Everybody who's an actor or even a director or any of these people, everybody's out there asking for permission to be the one to direct this movie because you have a background in it, or be the actor to to appear in the role because you're naturally suited for it in some way. But people are always asking for permission to perform their art or their skill. And that is a very tenuous position to be in if you're asking permission to do it and you're not getting any feedback to do it, and it's really a certainly not a guaranteed employment thing. So that results in the need to have some degree of calm throughout all that stuff. If you're willing to enter it's widely known. It's no secret that the film industry is hit and miss. And throughout, you never know what the things you can make the most fantastic thing. You can be an outstanding person and be your first and last job, and it never gets any awards, but it was a magnificent piece of work. There's nothing that is guaranteeing that it's going to continue after an initial success or anything like that. So if you're taking that kind of a risk as a creative person and you're saying, looks like if things go well, I'll never have a steady job, but I'll have an intermittent job. And now when people are facing, well, things aren't going all that well, and it looks like they might go even less well, which is sort of where everybody's sitting, because the studios now who have not been negotiating with the craft unions and have just refused to negotiate with them now are obviously taking a very heavy-handed kind of approach to things, and everybody, and that's visible in some of the statements that are coming from the CEO of certain outfits are not giving anybody real confidence that they're going to come to the negotiating table at any time soon. So there's a kind of a flipping off of a general arrogance. That's a tactic from obviously management tactic to make everybody think that they're completely unneeded. But we'll see how quickly that is reversed.
Would you say, Chris, that this is a great time to get creative? This is something we were talking about earlier, is whether it's like, doing something just for the fun of doing it, whether you're singing or painting or, whatever that is, and perhaps writing your own stuff.
Well, I would, there's a bunch of ways to sort of, create or try to fill the hole of creative momentum, because a lot of creative people, at whatever field you're in, often, you wake up and there's a brilliant idea rolling around in your head, and you're really enthused about it. In that split second, though, that your eyes blink open, and you decide that you're going to go out and do this for a split second, almost immediately self-censorship rings in, because you look down the road in a split second, you say, that's going to be so hard and really almost impossible for me, and forget about it. And you don't ever get out of that or continue on in that creative spring that allows you to at least get your idea started down on paper or fleshed out a little bit, or at least thinking about it in that early spark of inspiration, because the spark of inspiration needs to be fanned into flame, because all around you people are saying, why do you do that? It's never going to be, or the media itself is often telling you, don't even try, there's too much media out here, or there's just a lot of independent films, and even those now are choked and they can't even get into the festivals. There's a lot of sort of really overwhelmingly dark clouds hovering over everything. But it's always been a long shot industry. It's always been a long shot industry, and it's always been reinvented. It was originally, as we all know, stage plays. Then they became eventually filmed, but they were silent, black and white. new technology, talkies, silent films fall out of favor. Color defeats black and white. You know, black and white is a beautiful art form. Color's not necessarily the best thing for all movies, but it's become the dominant thing. All that stuff.
I would love to get into all of that, and I want to talk about how you got started, because you first started with music.
Yes, I did. And the great thing about music was that I started as a street musician because I couldn't play anything, and I got inspired by hearing a Django Reinhardt record, and I remember my old man had a fiddle up at the attic, so I asked him if I could have that, and sort of taught myself, took a lesson or two, and I just started to, you know, and part of that was to get over what I needed, what I knew was a performance anxiety step that a lot of people have to get over, and to get over your inhibitions about willingness to be embarrassed publicly, which is a big thing for a lot of people, not just in the film industry, it's just speaking out for yourself or stepping out. And a lot of people are getting the vibe that you have to be really perfect before you present yourself. But really, I think the key thing in advancing in a creative endeavor is actually having the willingness and the ability to step into situations that you aren't fully aware of what might happen, and you're almost certainly not competent in them, and the willingness to, you know, if you're easily embarrassed. A lot of actors are actually shy people who have found in coming to the acting craft in school or something, just for fun, have found that, you know, the way into individuating from the crowd and finding their own strength and character. And so if you never make it as an actor professionally, or you never do anything else again, acting gives you the tools of imagination and creative imagination to actually pretend and play a little bit, and that can be helpful in absolutely every endeavor. When somebody's in a boardroom and they've got an engineering problem on the factory floor or something, speaking up is a valuable. And if that means you have to act like somebody and your voice cracks and stuff like that, then that's just practice that improves that. And there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of talk now about breath work and breathing really being a quick way to reduce your public anxiety. And people say, like, this is often, I think it's close to true probably, is there a big anxiety, not the number one anxiety necessarily. I think end of the world is the number one anxiety amongst most people. But fear of public speaking is up there. And the fear of public speaking is people are afraid of fumbling, of blushing from embarrassing, of doing something horrible that they will then be framed by forever in time on the internet.
Social media.
It's just really killer stuff going out there now that is intimidating to a lot of people. But creativity itself can function silently, and you can paint and nobody can ever, you can do that in your closet, you can do that in somewhere, you can sketch, you can sing, you can do all these things that are creative. The thing that I think people have to battle to get over is that there's this sense now that everything can be commodified. Everything can be turned into a buck. Well, we used to do things like just, play music and put on little sketches.
For the fun of it,
just for the fun of it. Or as a little kid, you're putting on sketches for when the holidays, when the relatives are over and the kids are going to do something stupid, or whatever it is, or you're going to sing in a local choir. But the expectations now by most media, and certainly the tools have allowed it, for people to really feed their own ability to perform, and then get addicted to, but also get heaped upon the criticism, making themselves, and a lot of your initial introduction to creative endeavors, like singing in school or whatever you're doing, can be squashed if you are put in an embarrassing position immediately. You'll just get, it's so easy to put out the flame of excitement and enjoyment of creativity of anybody. And we all know this because there's a lot of people who don't want their their people or people around them getting creative because they feel challenged by that, because that somehow creative people have different sets of values, or are not really completely focused on the accumulation of assets and wealth and things like this, because the artistic impulse is really there's an artistic impulse and a process before you get to the money. And that's the point, is if you ever get money from your artistic impulses and the work you do, people say, aren't you lucky? And meaning for a lot of people, people think that's a frivolous pursuit, that then you're lucky to be able to pursue that kind of thing. But the fact is, all that denigrates everything we're talking about, which is human expression. And the inhibition or inhibitory schemes and situations that do stop us all from really getting into our full creative, inventive selves. And if you can't be creative in the small things when you're young and you're coming up, and look at how the creative arts have disappeared from schools and universities, and the humanities have all disappeared, and everybody thinks that's kind of worthless and useless and all that. The judgment of people who are in the arts, and yet that's the thing that expresses the human soul. And people cry over music, and they cry because they can sing themselves out of a bad state of mind. I was just listening to a blues singer that I admire very much, that very multi-talented old guy, dead now. But and the thing is, the blues, people sing the blues and sing the blues because you can sing yourself out of a really bad temperament.
It's like a therapy session.
Therapy session.
Whether
culture.
Yeah.
Cultural therapy session. And people don't, you go to the bar, down a few drinks, and sing with the crowd, you feel pretty good. So that we seem to be headed in a lot of the opposite directions. I know that when I was observing what was happening through technology, the internet and the digital advancement of equipment, recording equipment, and all that stuff, the ease of manufacturing what you're doing right here, or in music though, there was a lot of the tech and a lot of the outlets of streaming music allowed a lot of performers to get their music out into the public, but nobody's making any money.
Yeah.
Because there's a flood of volume, and everything now is it's not about the individual artists and what's being sort of put through the public showbiz feed, and it's just about volume now. You're listening, I was like flooding you. There's never a break in any of the media that we listen to or watch. There is no dead time. And in American dramatic media that I watch, there's fear of silence because there's always a soundtrack going. You're generally loud and taking you out. But a lot of the drama in the U.S. is up to 11. Everybody's always wanting to be over the top, and there's always movement, and things are loud. There's a lot of noise and flashing and sort of spectacle knitted into even the most modest shows. There's not a lot of like, everybody be quiet for a minute and we'll just kind of work through this, because showbiz has worked up to this sort of adrenaline pace of and that's the easiest thing to sell, and that's what sells internationally, because all that kind of stuff of why it's commercially.
It's like no time to breathe almost.
Yeah, there's no time to breathe, but they can make excuses. People have been making excuses for a long time, and people have come to this shortcut that you hear all the time. There's an old Hollywood aphorism that says, if you want to send a message, send it Western Union, which is this idea that entertainment and movies are really only meant for happy stuff and fluff stuff, and not ever taking on serious message films, which is and it's not because the audience don't like that. It's because it's an extremely powerful medium that can affect the way society is changed and informed. And we watch media now all the time. It's been replaced the kind of the well in the gathering place for news and stuff. Is that, and we just listen to those short stories and those short clips, and it's all about this. And that has really fractured storytelling. With the journalists, whatever happened to them? Who thought that journalism would be so hacked to death by just the lack of long form sponsorship, or all these things? Whoever thought that symphonies would die and ballets would disappear? Live music venues disappeared. That's what I lived through the introduction of disco and the death of live music here in Vancouver, and it was tragic and really quick, and hasn't recovered at all. It's now people are literally paying to play at venues and stuff, and when that stuff disappears, and the fact that you actually can't find people, or I saw somebody getting fined on Kitts Beach for a busker for not having the permit.
Oh, that's sad.
It's pathetic. It should be. It's criminalized. It's unbelievable. But that kind of all that kind of tamping down of creative expression leaves people wondering, why am I so blue, or what can I do? What I do in between these things? If I'm not working as an actor, what kind of job? It's a secondary job. It's not my passion. And then other people say, well, what right do you have to make sure that your job is your passion? Who are you to think that you deserve that? But
I've had those conversations with people where friends of mine have said that, majority of the people in the world hate their job. Like, you're not supposed to like your job. And that's when I talk on the show about, I had a COVID job. I lasted for just over a year. And I was like, I'm a creative. I'm an artist. And people around me who are artists and self-employed, they're like, Zara, you're a free bird. You're not someone who is sitting behind a desk. But I want to talk about going from music into writing, into film and television. How did that transition happen?
The transitions went from, I was playing street music. I met some people who were doing street theater. So I started hanging with them and started doing stuff and a little bit of puppet work and stuff in the street, in the parks around Vancouver, and for busking, same as busking. And I'd written a couple of sketches in that kind of outfit, and then somebody had asked me to. Now I'm playing in bands too, so I've started to play in bands, playing in R&B bands, sort of doing a mix of stuff, and started learning to play the bass well at the hotel next to the Balmoral Hotel down on Main and Hastings, and really learning on the spot. So I was eager to, just learn things, see what I could do, because I was young enough and stupid enough to, just try just about anything. And somebody said, could you help me with, a musical play that they were writing with, and could you write some song lyrics or something? And somebody said about a lyric there, written that there was a character in there that would make a good movie character, screenplay, in a screenplay. And I was literally like, what's a screenplay? And what does it look like? And I was in Toronto, so I went to the Toronto Library and took out a screenplay from the library to really, because this was in, this would have been in the late 80s. And I was just hustling, trying to do this and that, and didn't see myself as a filmmaker. I thought it was just too distant. There was nothing really. Vancouver wasn't booming. But I played a little in bands, and what I liked about the bands is we were writing some original tunes. The turnaround that I really appreciated about music was you could have an idea on Monday, introduce it to another band member on Tuesday, and they maybe come up with some chords. You got a verse or something. Wednesday you got another verse. Thursday, and then Friday you're going to put it in the set, and you'll play it Friday, first when nobody's in the club, first to see how it works, build the band together tight, and you get immediately the feedback. And if it goes down well and stuff, and you play it in your last set when everybody's drunk and doesn't care what's happening as much, then and they like it, then you go, hey, guess what? We're doing the right track, and maybe we're songwriters after all. That's that transition from doing cover bands to being original bands. So at the same time, from writing, I landed a job off that screenplay that I wrote, the first one I wrote. Somebody somehow got in the hands of somebody who wanted to be a producer, some local guy who was an assistant director here in Vancouver, and he applied. He was a bit of a hustler, he thought, and he applied and got a little funding money just around Christmas, and I was dying. I was just be the first money I'd made as a writer, and he took off with the money to Mexico for Christmas and left me broke on the street. So that was my first experience with it.
So can I ask you something? Did you like go to school for this, or the creativity was just coming out of you, and you were just like going from writing songs to writing a screenplay, and you're just gonna give it a shot?
Yeah, because I really that was just the impulse in me, was to to drift and bounce around, go to California and find work down there. Just I went to Europe young, chasing a girlfriend lived in Hamburg for a few years, and just was trying to. I had a deep inkling somewhere that I ignored that I might be a writer, and that was just that young. Here I am bouncing around Europe, wanting to be a cafe writer, and but it was in me just not to be captured by straight job. I just knew I wasn't built for that. I knew that a long time ago. And in terms of creativity, my family, everybody in my family, I think, played music, and my brother had a band. My oldest brother had a band that was successful in the folk era, and I was living in the basement, and they rehearsed right next to my room, and I was looked up at them. They were teenagers playing.
So
I was a kid.
surrounded by artists.
I was surrounded by that. My artists in the family, and trying different things. And same guy turned into a painter. My other brother was a piano player and turned into a sculptor. And my youngest brother was a full-time musician. So.
You wrote the script, and then this guy takes off with the money.
The guy takes off with the money, and then so I threatened him with, that he would have to pay a lot of money. Now that he stiffed me for $5, he'd have to, pay me $25, and he just paid the $5 after that. But it was a good lesson, and not the first time I've been ripped off. Not the last time I was ripped off by any means, but it encouraged me to pursue other kind of jobs, and I had that screenplay, and so somebody who knew that guy had read it, and they were an AD, and they told somebody that I was a writer, and I got into the door for a American show that was shooting up here. In my first job as a story editor, I had no idea what a story editor was, and then I moved very quickly through the ranks. From about then to about 5 years before I was running my own show. It really happened very quickly, because I discovered that all the odd jobs that I'd had, and basically the 10 or 15 years that I'd had, once I got out of high school, had bouncing around and hustling and trying to make money doing this, that, and the other, had taught me just, I can talk to people, and I'm curious, and a lot of people who are, as it turns out, a lot of writers can be shy people and aren't really outgoing people, and actually I've gone to a bunch of different sort of writers' room where I've been shocked at the people who haven't had a lot of variety. They go straight to film school, and they come out and they kind of hustle into a screenwriting thing, or they go to law school and become a screenwriter and blah, blah. And so that allowed me to talk to everybody and kind of move on up and become a writer-producer, because I saw, quite frankly, when I was writing, I wanted to always get down to the set, so I was always asking whoever my boss was in a room, can I go to set? I'm kind of done my pages that you asked me. Yeah, go to set, wherever it is. And then I just got used to seeing how the directors talk to actors on set, and I thought I wouldn't talk to them that way, because you just confused the hell out of them when you actually just wanted them to, turn the other way. And I was going. Sometimes there's just people who are in jobs that demand great communication skills, and they don't have any, and they never had any, but they got the job because they're determined to be a job. It can happen to a lot of people. But I just found that I had communication skills, and that I was writing and learning from some pretty good patient writers. My first couple of gigs out in Toronto working for a cop show, and which I got off my second show. And it just for about 5 years I was pitching everywhere, and people were saying, "Hey, Chris, they might need a writer for this show." Stuff like Secret Service or Night Heat or something like this.
So you've done a lot of shows that are like that.
Yeah.
Like Da Vinci's and Intelligence and
Yeah. Now those ones I created. So
Yeah.
so then I made the big leap to creating my own show and becoming a showrunner.
So I want to talk about that. You're doing writers' rooms. You're going on set. When did you wake up and you were like, I'm going to write my own? I've had enough experience being in the writers' room, being on set.
That didn't it didn't come like that. It came like I'd worked in Toronto, and the end of the gig in Toronto was coming to an end. The end of this series year, I guess, season, and I was going back to Vancouver, and a guy I'd been working with says, "Hey, you're going to Vancouver? I know the guy who's executive producer of the original MacGyver, and they're doing a couple of last seasons up here, whenever that was, 1989 or something, and 90. And go see him. Just go see him when you're there on your way to LA, because I was going to bounce back to home and then go look in LA for more work." And so I went into MacGyver offices, and they hired me in the room. I was going, "Hey, I don't know MacGyver, I haven't seen the show." And they say, "Okay, we're hiring you in the room." And they made me a writer on that. And then, in the middle of that, I'd been writing for them for about 6 months, and a guy called me up and said, "Hey, the CBC and Disney are looking for a family hour show. Have you got anything?" And I said, "Let me think." And so then I came up with an idea and sent it, and then they liked the pilot at the CBC, so they said, "And we're going to go ahead and shoot." So I went into the offices at MacGyver and says, "Hey, I got a pilot and I'm quitting." And they said to me, "You're quitting? It's just a pilot. Pilots don't go anywhere." It's like, I said, "Yeah, I know, but
to go from MacGyver to
this is like, this is," and they go, "For the CBC, and I said, "Yeah, no, but it's my thing, and I get a chance, I'll get a chance to do that." And they said, "But you don't know that the pilot's gonna go and be made." I said, "Yeah, I know." And I said, "But it's mine, it's mine. It's like, it's like I'll get to, fail on my own terms." And they said, "Okay, tell you what, we'll make you producer." And I go, "Oh, you mean you make your producer and stay here?" And they go, "Yeah, we'll make you producer, give you your own office." And I'm going, "Nah, I think I'm going to do the other thing." And so they were kind of, "What?" But they wished me well, and the other thing went well. And then I did a couple of years of that show, and then...
And this is Da Vinci's?
No, this is something called Mom P.I.
Okay.
It was a comedy, a dramedy. And that went well for a couple of years, and it was at CBC, and then some kerfuffle happened, and it was doing really well, and they gave me some excuse why they canceled it. And I went down at that point. Eventually, remember, I was headed to LA, and then I got MacGyver, and then I got the pilot, but then now I'm clear to go to LA. So now I go to LA, and I've got 2 kids, young kids at this point. And so I do that, and I go to LA, and I bounce around there, and I end up writing, after a couple of years there, I end up writing a movie that goes to auction. Because I was, I never headed really into television. It was like, just all this stuff is kind of, I'm going to take advantage of these happy accidents. Didn't have a plan. But I knew that I'd started out, writing a screenplay of a movie, and I kind of enjoyed that, want to get back. Then I wrote something that I sent out to my agent in New York, because he had New York offices and LA offices. And it was the first draft. I said, "Take a look at this," and he ended up sending it back to the LA and the agent in LA, and at Gersh agency, and he was a famous old guy who became my agent. Gersh came was already there, but he was the old guy who had been the agent for guys like Humphrey Bogart.
No way.
And he became my agent, so I can brag. Me and Humphrey, same agent. What can I tell you?
No big deal.
Not a big deal, no. And a bunch of other people, of course. But and he did good agency. And so he picked it up, and he said, "I liked it." He took it home, and in Beverly Hills, he read it, and the next day he gets up and walks it across the street to his son, who was an agent at the thing and a head of directors. And the son, he says, read this, I think that we could make this. And, or sell it. And then his son reads it and says, yeah, I think you can get it. So on Sunday, they walk it across the street to the guy who is at the moment the hottest director in the world. He just finished. He's the guy that did Speed, and then he did Twister, Yonda Bond.
Yeah.
So he bought the movie, and we went out in the package, and then it went as an auction. So one of those moments. So I found out on Monday morning that the draft I'd sent out Thursday to New York was in auction, as in play, as of 9 a.m. on Monday morning. So my agent called me because he says, hey, your script's in, it's up for auction, it's doing well. I was going, that was a draft. And they go, yeah, people like it, and now they're bidding on it. And so by the end of so late in the day, they were keeping me posted. Late in the day, they said, yeah, no, it's up there, it's up there, it's up there, it's up there, it's up there. It's going up to the big number. What's the big number? And they go, the big number is 7 figures. I'm going, Jesus Christ. And and then he says, but tonight, Spielberg's going to read it. I go, oh, Spielberg's going to read it. It's really like this. So, we could be going, this could go through the roof. And the next morning, Spielberg doesn't like it. If you just even so the price starts dropping like ting, 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 and everybody, sell that mother, sell that mother. Take what you can get. And so it was, a few figures less than that. But it sold, and it introduced me to the community. I got really introduced around town really nicely, and I was hoping to have and it looked like I was going to be writing a lot of movies. And then there was some dramatic sort of domestic stuff that occurred, and I had to move back to Vancouver, try to settle my kids, maybe make everything. And that's when I decided I needed a calm and non-LA environment for my kids. So I said I got to write some television. I wrote some television, got pitched to CBC. That was Da Vinci. So before that, I've been.
I have a question for
Sure.
you. Have you had over the years, like so many people out of film schools or like all these places who've come to you, because you've had quite a career.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, opportunity comes and you're just ready and you're like, let's go.
Well,
what advice do you give to those people? It's
put yourself in the place where they make television and they make movies, if that's what you want to do. Because if I advise people that even just visit Los Angeles and see the extent of the industry. It's an industry. Here in Vancouver, if you're a Vancouver and you're trying to get a picture of is there a future for me in this thing, you only see it under Vancouver terms, and you're seeing, well, there's some difficulties there. There's a lot of Vancouver work that's up here that is service of it mostly and almost entirely now. The occasional the show might land, Canadian show might land out here, but the provinces and the feds have decided that just in terms of just work and employment policy, it's much more beneficial to a wider number of people in the industries, and the benefits that spread to obviously to all the suppliers for the industry, to make the tax benefits attractive to Americans, and to make things attractive to attracting American production, and downplaying the necessity of demanding that the Canadian broadcasters fulfill their real obligations of broadcasting Canadian television talent in prime time, which they don't do. So there's a real contrast here for the benefit of the many, but they're really not the non-benefit of the fewer creative types. So we're facing a lot of problems here in Canada that aren't insurmountable, but in terms of timeliness right now, it's really important for people in uncertain times to keep their creative spirit, and maybe start doing creative things they haven't done in a while, but what they can really feel good about, because they can get that satisfaction. Pull out some paintbrushes. It doesn't matter if you've done it or not. But getting that satisfaction of throwing some paint on some paper or canvas, it tickles all your imaginative results, and you will feel something, and it will feel like your creative chops are being and your creative life is being explored, because it's emotional, whatever you do. And if you sing whatever is available to you that gives you a little bit of a pleasure. Because me, I wake up in the morning and I know I'm going to be creative. And some creative people, perhaps because they haven't had a great deal of success or they haven't had the feedback, are uncertain about the longevity or the durability of their creative spark. And because they've never had the time to develop, to know that, hey, your creative spark develops, and as I have over, it develops over years, and until now, when I director, writer, run a show, I have 35 years of experience doing this, that with some great success and some innovation and some stuff, that people tend to trust me, the younger people who come to work on the set, or or in whatever position, and that they're being led by somebody who knows what they're talking about and has been through a lot of experiences and is willing to share them and guide them and mentor people. But a lot of this begins and ends with putting your own skin in the game, and making your own mistakes. You learn best from making your own mistakes, I believe, because you really do not want to repeat those, or a lot of those, or you just learn to do them really well, and keep doing it till you succeed somehow. But so all these things just mount up. You need the feedback that nobody's a master or even a journeyman on their first day of anything. And the willingness to be embarrassed is often the willingness of admitting, I don't know. And a lot of people have a great deal of times of admitting to themselves or anybody else that they don't know, because there's evidence that the people who and say, I know everything, they get ahead. Because that seems to be the lesson is, the people that don't know, they just say, I'm just keep on lying until I learn. That whole thing of like fake it till you make it. Unfortunately, this is why we get a lot of dreck out there, and why we get a lot of mismanagement, is simply because some people, the people who are willing to step on other people's things, lie constantly and use AI to write scripts, are going to get ahead simply because the bully gets ahead in the room. And there's a way of not being a bully and protecting your ideas, but just being firm, and the best thing to really is to know your stuff. Don't pretend you know you don't. The worst thing that can happen, and it happens all the time, to people coming into town who are young and trying to bully and fake their way through stuff that they really don't have the depth of experience in, and that doesn't go over well for the project. Because really it should be led by people who have a plan, have shared the plan, and have prepped as much as they can, so that everybody, when they hit the floor, they know where they're going, they know how much time they have to do it, and they know what the expectations are of quality, and everybody's getting, this is a knockoff thing, they're just doing it for the thing because they got to get it out before the strike calls, whatever. Like, just get it done, get it done, get it done.
And there was a lot of rush of that before.
Yeah, so it's going to happen.
So let's talk about Da Vinci's, the script, the process of you writing the script. Did you have any idea it was going to become what it became?
No, none. But the reason I'll tell you why it was successful, there's a number of reasons why it was successful. I'll just start with saying, it was when it came out, it was a pretty tight show. It was good. The pilot was good, and there was a reason for why the pilot was good. Normally, a pilot is they give you one pilot. They say, okay, this is going to be a 60-minute pilot. So I said, listen, I can't. And my experience has been at that time, is that you can't give a good impression of what a show might be in one episode, because you end up all the different people who are asking for things of the show, like I'd like to see a little more of this in the show, I'd like to see a little of that show, I'd like to see a little more of that character, I'd like to see like this, and we'd like to see representation from this sort of person, and representation of this. Well, what you end up doing is you're just saying, okay, we've put all the furniture in the smallest room. What do you want me to do with her? We sat in every chair. And nobody's like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? I said, I'm only going to do this if, and it was very unusual, nobody's ever asked for this apparently, is, at least at that network, I'm sure other people have asked for it, but is I said, I want 3 1 hours, and call that a pilot. I want 3 hours. and they will be each 1 hour. It's not a movie. It's not going to be like, oh, you want to, no, I don't want to, I want 3 1 hours, so I want to show you the full depth of what can be done, and how I can write to keep people riveted to the thing. I mean, I need to demonstrate to this that I can glue eyeballs, and so made it. Got cast a great lead that nobody wanted, at the time, and I fought for, and said I'd walk off the show if I didn't get my lead approved, and that kind of let everybody sort of have confidence in me, because when it debuted, it came out to rave reviews that Canada had never seen before. I'm not lying about that. It's just that was the fact. Every paper in the country was raving about it, and we were releasing in Canada. At that time, our pilot season was in October, after the U.S. pilot season, which that used to be a season, where everybody released everything at the same time, is in September. And so all the shows the U.S. shows would come out in September, and the critics would all have reviews by the end of September, and nothing had emerged that was great. And we came out in early October, like October 1st or 4th, and boom, blew it up. It was like rave reviews all of it, because people said, hey, this is, tired of the doldrums, we think we really got something. And I think, all the Canadian papers just blew up, very excited about it. But also, I think it was the New York Times got hold of it, and the American paper said, hey, look to the north, we got a great show. So that, and it's, nobody had a hit like that at CBC ever. So it just went boom all over that, and then just ran for 7 years, and then the 8th year was City Hall. I squeezed another year out of it because they wanted another show from me. But everything shifted through all the successes, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about just being thrown in the deep end of the pool, and then the pool's lit on fire. You kind of start paying attention to everything that's going on, and I just realized that every little thing was really important, and I tried to bond with every head of department, everybody on the show, and just encourage everybody, saying, this is not an American show. You can leave your American accents at home. This is Vancouver. When I write a scene for Main and Broadway, go to Main and Broadway, because that's what it's going to look like when we get there. There's not going to be a lot of new stuff dumped on Main and Broadway to make it look like it's an American city, and so I don't want any Brooklyn accents here, and I don't want certain. So I was really worked very hard. This is the beginning at breaking a lot of American style out of the Canadian actors, saying, we're not doing that here. We're doing this. Every actor on this show is from Vancouver, and it's about Vancouver, and we dress like a Vancouver and behave like Vancouver, and guess what? We shoot in the rain. And some of our most fantastic stuff, I felt like I was Kurosawa. Kurosawa always looks for, he gets the rain machines, he gets out the windows like this, and he loves shooting. I'm going, well, we don't need all that. It's just raining really hard. Let's just shoot it.
Welcome to Vancouver.
And it turns out to be a really brilliant, because we got, I was saying, this is our thing. We are going to shoot no matter what the circumstances are. And that included, everybody was saying, how can we shoot with the buses going by in the background? We're we can't match it. I'm saying, well, first of all, we'll get used to it, because we cannot be a run and gun guerrilla operation that we are, because we have to shoot quickly and on the streets, because we can't pay for sets that have to be built, because it's a cheap budget, it's a Canadian show, so we had to find ways to be inventive, and the inventiveness of it. I soon busted expectations of the network to be like in studio more and in the pathology suite more. And I'm saying, that's just there. That's color. It's good. It's important. But it's not the real thing. I've soon discovered that the life was in the street, and that I had figured out a way to shoot, and I had figured out it was a way to get a lot of actors in the show, and everybody was complaining the biggest expense on the show, aside from the Teamsters, was just the budget of the how many actors I was. And I'm saying, well, if you want veracity and you want it to look like it's shot, at Main and Carroll, we're going to need some extras, and it's got to feel real, and we got to contain that. We got to we got to do everything we do to shoot on the street and let it go. And I we started creating. I had a really good help. It was really, really, really great the DOP cinematographer David Frazee, who everybody in Vancouver should know. They probably work for him at this point. And he and I evolved a shorthand about how we could get maximum cinematic, exposure, on a shoestring budget, and how we could, move away from some of these really time-consuming elements on the street of, getting the dolly out for a lot of things, getting a crane out for certain shots. We said, we're not doing that. We're shooting street level. The thing we need. So Dave and his crew went out and found, equipment that could serve this sort of the same thing as a nice bit of a crane or a dolly stuff. And we were inventive that way, using skateboard dollies and what we call jib arms, which now are used by everybody.
Yeah.
So you can swim. So we were really at the cusp. We were the first television show to actually broadcast in letterbox format, which is, and then people saying, "Wait, are we losing like part of the picture there? We're watching this." And so you get some of the people who wrote in saying, "We're not seeing all the picture." So there was some really inventive. It was an inventive atmosphere, and encouraged by me. One of the things I got to say was is that at that point in my life, it was the priorities of my life were taking care of my children, the health of my children, because we were in a difficult situation. And the thing that was important to me was those children. And so when somebody said to me, we're going ahead with the show, we love it like this, we were already in prep. And I'm saying, but we're not approving so-and-so for your lead. And I said, and they said, so we want to give you 24 hours to, we don't have confidence. And I said, well, they said, we want to give you, 24 hours to see if you can, adjust your position on that. And I said, I don't need 24 hours, but I'll tell you what, I'll give you 24 hours to decide if you want a show or not from me. And I hung up on him.
Wow.
Now, the dramatic thing about this was, I was in my office, and I've been called to the phone to take that phone call that I just described, because I was just in a meeting like this far apart of a wall with 4 or 5 writers all sitting around that I was auditioning to see who was going to make a cut for the writer. They heard everything. They heard my assistant come out and say, it's, the head of CBC, it's the call, like this. So I went, so they heard me say, I don't care if I want to show, you take it. They heard, I went out there, and all these people who had been really excited about perhaps getting on the show, and it's gone like this. It was like the blood was literally draining from everybody's. It was like, it was one of those moments, and I just jumped back and I said, so, I like this. And then we just went ahead, and everybody was happy at the end. So, but the really what gave me the chutzpah to say that, because I'm not like that, I'm not a bully, but
I
or
think
risk. I'll tell you what it was that I had real issues in my life, the health and welfare of my children. And as far as I was concerned, you and this television show, hey, if it ain't happening, it ain't happening, because I got work to do. I'm good. Like, you're not going to pick this up, okay? Because I got somebody on the phone that's going to hire me for another job. That's where it was. I was like, I don't care. So I cared a lot. So I both cared not a whit about what people, would say about what I couldn't write about, because I'm saying, no, this is like, I'm taking a shot here to prove to my kids that you can work your way out of a bad situation. I'm going to because that's what my kids needed, and I needed, is to work myself out of a bad situation. And I was going to be the living model about how you can take. That was my motivation. Still is my motivation. I still try to be proud for my kids.
I also hear that you're committed to your vision, and it's like whether like LA or in the writer's room at MacGyver, that when you have that gut instinct, I think that's like for myself and for a lot of people watching who will get to watch this, because you've developed and created all these shows, brought work in Vancouver for actors, for camera crew, all these people. Yet at the same time, you're like, this is my vision and this is how I see this. And obviously those shows have gone to see success. And now when you say something, people listen because they know Chris has a vision.
Yes and no. Because unfortunately, there was a move here in Canada that I'm going to speak about that I thought was a bogus move, and I'll give you the background with it, and why people have heard of me, and I had my opportunity. Times were different, and I had an opportunity. The gates opened because I had somebody at the head of the CBC who read my script, said, "I really like this show." And I said, "What now? We have to talk about language, and how and as we do here, we're like, what can I say? What can't I say?" And I've been pretty good so far. And but I said, "Well, you just can't say the F word. How about that?" And I said, "Deal, shake now." And I can say everything else. Yeah. So I won a big thing, and I was able to swear in all kinds of colloquial ways. Stuff that really became a part of certain characters, because I was able to actually. That sounds like somebody's, saying it, calling somebody, whatever. It gives it a veracity, because and this is what, anyway. So that was really the big thing, is I had support of the head of the CBC, and I had support from the head of the drama department of the CBC, and from the people who really loved the show and were really behind it. And so I had a tremendous amount of support for that. So that was what really allowed me. I talked about, a lot of people not getting feedback. I had immediate feedback. As soon as the show was on, it was like everybody was going to rave, like these are hits and stuff. The other odd thing that happened was, as soon as that happened, it was that people started in the industry, and and at the CBC and other people were saying, "So when are you moving to LA?" And which I'm going, that is a really common response to anybody who has any visibility, not even talent, visibility. It's like, go to LA. When are you going to LA? When are you going to LA? Which, at that time, I said, nah, I'm going here. This is like, one actor, a very good friend of mine, a guy called Matt Frewer, who was famous for being Max Headroom, really, really a wonderful actor. And I had him on. He said, "Chris, you got the best thing going on." It was about the second or third year I had him on the show. I'd met him. And he says, "You got the best thing going on here." He says, "You have complete creative control, and you don't have to live in LA." And that was, I had other people like Donnelly Rhodes, who was the veteran elder actor on the show. He said, "Man, you got no idea how good this is. This is a very unusual situation. And because this is really only your second show that you're running, it's like, you got no idea what's going on here, that how much freedom you have." It's like, keep going. Don't F up now. And I just had such positive feedback from the city, from the actors, from the crews. It was like right from the very beginning, as soon as people saw what I was trying to do, or what we were trying to do. And it's like anything else, you have to weed out the lames. You ain't on the program, out. And there was people like that who said, "Hey, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it the old way because this is disruptive." I'm saying, I don't care if it's disruptive. We got to get this done because this is how we do it now. And I was all about the actors, and giving the actors good words, and giving them good stories, and giving them, and being there on set. The importance of being on set for me was like somebody saying, and the director saying, there's a little problem." I say, "Well, here's what it is." And I'll just say it. "No, you don't have to say that. If that's the confusion, let's just take that. You don't have to say that at all. You can just look. I can see from the way you guys rehearse this, you don't need that line, and you don't need that line." And they're going, "Great, we don't need that line. I don't need to do this. I can do that. So I'm going to cut that line, cut that line, cut that line." And people, often was like, "Don't cut any more lines, because, I had 6 lines and now I only got 3. I'm saying, "Yeah, but you're coming back now, next episode now." Like the great thing is about Da Vinci. If you don't die, and I was counseling, I was used to say, if you don't die, you might be back, and even if you do die, you might be back in the morgue, and we got to pay you for that one because you were hired as an actor. Yeah. It's like, so there was that. And then it got so much success, and I just started developing other stuff and doing
movies. Intelligence and the Romeo section.
The Romeo section, a bunch of other stuff. The Handler in the U.S., I did a couple of shows. Yeah.
I have to tell you, like, as you were mentioning earlier about filming in Vancouver, I think I'd been in Canada for like a couple of years, and I first started out as a model, and then, I was still like non-union, and I was like, okay, all these people are like, you want to transition and try acting and stuff. And I think this is like in the first year, one of the first things was like not so far from here, I won't say where.
Yeah.
Intelligence.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not going to name the location and the scene, but it was like all red.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of people at the end of just the 7 seasons, not including City Hall, Da Vinci's Inquest. The casting director came in and slapped this big, thick sheet of paper on my desk, and she says, "Those are all the actors you've cast in the 7 years of Da Vinci's Inquest. 2,000.
Amazing.
2,000 roles, which
Amazing.
means I've written or had at hand the majority of writing 2,000 roles, and that kind of, so I'm going, wow, there's volume there, and there's a really ongoing fabric of that series that is unusual, not like no other series, because I was following and tracking and shadowing real stuff that was happening in Vancouver, and a real big murder case, I started following the missing and murdered women issues in episode 1, when we didn't know that there was the pig farm. And I hired in the second year, and I was trying to get information from all the homicide detectives, and everybody was really, well, we don't know what's happened. We don't even know if this is murder yet. We haven't done like this. And then I hired, in I think the second season, a homicide detective who was responsible for really pinpointing who did it, what was going on. And so I learned to take on, maybe it was the third year, I learned to take on technical advisors that really knew their stuff and were eager to, hey, he's doing a reasonable thing. Because a lot of people were like skeptical. Even Larry Campbell, who was a technical advisor for Da Vinci's Inquest and was a coroner at the time, very skeptical that I was going to do a good job, you know, because so much television is just horrible and stupid. But as the show rolled out, I got a lot of proppers from the people, whoever professions that we were representing, but also a lot of people who were, you know, involved in some of the issues that we were, you know, writing about and you know, for exploiting for the drama, and discovering a lot of stuff in the city and all that kind of stuff. And we had that connection with a lot of people in the city, because they knew we were writing about Vancouver. They knew it was a hit, and they were very proud of the show. And I had somebody who ended up working as a casting, extras casting person for us, who was from South Africa, and a African woman who said that she came to Vancouver because she saw Da Vinci's Inquest and saw how many people of color were employed on the show, and said, oh, I might even get work there. So, and I know that that's happened. You know, people have moved to Vancouver from Canada to say, because hey, maybe we'll get on the show because he's hiring brown people. And I got into this thing of bringing people who had no experience. I was also, you know, eager to, you know, and a lot of people, I hate to say people of color, but just a lot of people who don't, non-white people, had difficulty getting experience. And
I remember when I started, it was like, it was barely anything. It was like hot girl number 3, bikini chick number 2. The beer
bikini chick
girl
number 1 sometimes.
Yeah.
And
you know, it never, I barely read for
yeah,
characters with
it
roles.
was an issue. But I just started doing people, and I would work people in sort of line by line, and you know, I had the most, like the one thing that I was false about Vancouver at the time that I was showing on the show was I had the most integrated uniform cops nothing like Vancouver, because that was how I was starting and bringing a lot of people into the show who hadn't done a lot and didn't have a lot to, you know, to prove themselves that they could handle the gig. So I started bringing people in and say, okay, you're getting a line here and a line there, and if they do a good job in the show, I'm saying, listen, it's a good thing to have like you don't want to turn every character that is on the show into a regular, or expect people for them to be even recurring. You've got to have the veracity of the city. You will never see that person again. You will never hear the end of this story, you know, which was the thing that was really new and at first upsetting for people, saying, are you ever going to tie something up? Is that character coming back? And then by the second season, people were saying, that's pretty cool how now you sometimes don't tie up. And then by the third season, it was like, we love you never tie anything up. and so it was. There's an education of the audience about what you're doing in your show that happens. Right.
And it's also showcasing Vancouver
It's everything.
and all the talent here. So
Yeah.
let's talk about intelligence and the Romeo section. I mean, before we even go there, my next question, to be honest, is we need another show from Chris.
Yeah, believe me, I tried.
That is based in Vancouver with Vancouver talent.
Well, that's the intention, I hope. And I had a couple of big shows go down, you know, that didn't get picked up after years of development and promise and all that kind of stuff. And you know, priorities have changed in terms of who gets to do what a little bit in some of these times, you know, because there's been positive shift to the employment of you know, people who have had opportunities before, and non-white people, and a lot of that stuff. The how that all works out is sort of on a case-by-case basis, because I think what's happened is that a lot of that stuff is just sort of virtue signaling, and people don't have the actual intent to really back you know, a lot of the amount of non-white programming or diversity programming that they allege they want to do. I think there's a great deal of reluctance. I think there is a split in, at least, we don't talk about it much in Canada, or it doesn't get you know really thoroughly discussed in Canada, but in the U.S. we know there's a lot of you know differences of opinion with, that are being violently defended or aggressively pushed through, that have really you know started to you know really divide into camps everywhere, you know, of people aren't quite this enough, they're not politically correct here, they're not this, all that kind of stuff that's can be eventually, I think, healed and brought back to some sort of, or there never was a unity. It was always, you know, it's never been a really good demonstration of you know, a democratic state, but or a state of equality, by any means. But now that when things are starting to fracture and you know, more little communities sort of you know separating from, you know, it remains to be seen if there's going to be the, you know, big mainstream shows that will pursue anything except you know the more bland thing, so as not to offend anybody in any way. And I think that is where some of the opening up of things can result, is that the latent censorship of everything just rises up, because people, you know, said, hey, you know, we'll lose customers. We can see that happening over the thing and some of these big demonstrations. Just things are changing really rapidly. Performers are getting pelted. You know, there's an atmosphere of anxiety in large venues that was never there, or was not to that degree, and not the volatility, and everything that's happened is sort of affected large venues, and we'll see what happens when some of the football seasons and some of the sports venues start to fill up and stuff like that. But anyway,
it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 6 months, and hopefully much, you know, like sooner than that. Intelligence. Let's talk about that.
Intelligence. I thought that I've been trying to, actually since the second year of Da Vinci, I wanted to you know, start. I was really interested in starting a spin-off show, because there was so much interest in what I was doing. People were saying, hey, can you get a spin-off out of this show? And that I wanted to do a spin-off for featuring Ian Tracy. And so, and people eventually sort of said, hey, let's just get this thing rolling, and maybe it's a little too early to be talking about spin-offs. That was basically the Canadian answer is, a guy can't have two shows in Canada. That was sort of the thinking at the time. I wanted to talk about that. I'll talk about this now, and we'll come back to intelligence. When I started Da Vinci, I was the sole guy. I think, I don't want to take, credit for something I'm not doing. But a writer, showrunner was in Canada not quite recognized the same way it had been done in the U.S. and in England, where it's acknowledged that the writer is really the creative engine and coal room of the show. They were the one that conceived it, has props the long run, and they are the one that do the hiring and the firing and just generally run all creative aspects of the show. Well, at the time, in Canada and again now, what we call the line producers, the nuts and bolt producers who hire everybody, found that their power was suddenly being challenged and usurped by a writer. Me, they didn't like that at all, because they saw that this one show that was suddenly a huge success, and people were starting to say, "Hey, is it because the writer's running the show?" And that made a lot of the line producers pretty upset to see that they were going to perhaps have to shift and not be the people that hired the head of the writers, but actually have to respond to the writer, which is the way that good stuff gets made. And it has been historically. Britain, that's how they do it, and the U.S. and everybody else is you got a showrunner who's going to write or direct the thing, and the line producers are going to work the manufacturing end of things. So that has not, and a lot of people thought that Da Vinci would change the pattern so that a lot more writers, showrunners would be making the creatives. And it happened in Sparks, but what happened was that one of the guilds here pushed to get showrunners as a guild position. So that means that line producers can hire a guild position under sort of, and still get back to be running the show. So it was a demounting of or a decommissioning of the agency of the writer by the Writers Guild itself. People don't see it like that. I see it like that, because one of the things that I see happening is that writers are here not being really given enough experience to become an experienced showrunner. You got to know stuff, and there's a course given now by one of the Eastern, and has been for a little bit. The people come up, they get a 2-year or year and a half showrunning course, which is it's like walking around the swimming pool for a year and a half, and the instructor saying, "Trust me, it's wet in there, and you'll find out when you finally get to swim. But we've got a year and a half of courses before we hit the water." It's like, seriously, throw them in the deep end, light the pool on fire, because there's a meltdown factor of it. The stress is so intense of getting out the stories, getting out everything, making sure that the errors aren't made in the general flow of the creation of the whole picture, which I don't always know what's perfect and right, but I know what's wrong. I can hear the clank, if something ain't working. So that's really what they're to stop the clanking and to kill cute, because or whatever is going on set that you're saying, hey, there's a tone here that's emerging it's not the tone of the show and will hurt us if we continue in this throwing jokes. And I have the disciplined actors saying, listen, you're hitting things like a punchline. It's not a punchline. And well, it's funny though. I'm going, yeah, but you don't have to punch it. Like if it's funny, somebody at home will laugh. We don't want that. We don't need the crew to be laughing, And we got to, let's just bring it back and let the audience interpret how they feel about things. And you just get an opportunity in by being a writer who can be the final authority to make last-minute adjustments, to enjoy the improv and the accidents. But to get back to your question about intelligence and how that, I don't know if you want how that came about, but what I had felt with Ian Tracy that he deserves the show. So I finally, when we were running out of the last year of Da Vinci and Stephen Harper had become Prime Minister and things started to get, they turned down the heat they turned down my volume a little bit. And things started to change, but they didn't have anything else in the hopper and development except something from me. They weren't expecting, the Conservatives to get elected. I don't know what was happening, but they had only, so they gave me another year to develop intelligence, because I said, I don't want to make intelligence without having some time to really kind of work it on intelligence. I pitched the show. They said, "Sounds good. We like Ian, yeah, all that stuff." By that time, Ian had proven himself as a leading man, and so I started pushing for that show, and I thought that I had because they'd say, the head of the CBC said that Da Vinci saved the drama department. So I figured I had the right to try something that was a little off stream in intelligence, like it's not all about good guys and sort of the crime fighter aspects of the social justice aspects of Da Vinci. I said, I'm going to try something a little bit different, because this was also at the time when a lot of dark stuff was happening on U.S. cable and streaming, and they were taking a lot more kind of criminal stuff and taking a little. So that I wanted to write that way, and that I wanted to write about the scene. I knew, the little bit about the scene in Vancouver, the dope scene, and how the city changed and all that kind of stuff, and how the gang movement was coming on, and that show, when it went to market to sell, blew up, and it was selling faster than Da Vinci in more countries, and yet we got canceled in a little bit of a political action by I believe the Conservative Party.
And you went on to do the Romeo section.
The Romeo section, I went from there, actually, from Intelligence House, I went to New York to do
Boardwalk Empire.
Boardwalk Empire.
Yes.
And I was out there on the Scorsese show
Like
in the writer's room. Big room.
Were you like the only Canadian writer who went in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think historically, yeah.
And how many awards has the Boardwalk Empire won? Like it was
one
of the most
we were
talked about.
Nominated for a ton.
Yeah.
And so I was there for the third year, and HBO had hired me to, as everybody hopes that the scripts will come out of the writers' room faster. It'll never happen. It is what the culture of the writings room are what they are, and they can be very prickly rooms where everybody's a little testy about their idea and promoting their idea, or it can be a congenial room where everybody's really very supportive of everybody and their deals. Everybody's feeling like they're not getting screwed out of their deals or not being respected, so it was a good room. There was a lot of really good writers in the room, and I felt really welcome there. And I liked living in New York, not as much as I like living in Vancouver. But the show was good because it was a period show, and I'd never been able to write a period show. And I think that my experience as a showrunner, when I went there, the guys who were running the show had this is their first experience as showrunners. They'd had a couple of years at it with Boardwalk, and the show was doing really well for HBO, and everybody wanted to be on all the fantastic. So the thing about working in the U.S., both I'd done The Handler. We skipped it when I went and did The Handler. I did that in the middle of Da Vinci, between Da Vinci and Intelligence. But I did it either doing The Handler in L.A. or Boardwalk in New York. The availability of fantastic talent is the thing that sets it apart from Vancouver. We just don't have the numbers, and it's not that we don't have the same ability or the same number of we just don't have the same number of talented people because of the volume of work down in LA and New York, and of course New York with its stage feeding system and all that kind of stuff. They have real industries, real vibrant industries, and ours is not vibrant enough in terms of getting people Canadians directly into the industry working on stuff, because some of the restrictions of work. There's a lot of service industry stuff here, but there's a lot of actors who don't get a chance to audition for a lot of the American shows that are shooting here, or they let alone get cast because they're American shows and they want them cast by American actors. So it's a bit of a blessing that we have all the service work, because some people are getting work. But it's not enough to sustain the growth of an acting community, or to grow the acting community with a future towards feature films or really sustainable Canadian self-made and created stuff. I'm not a freak about having they must be Canadian stories, because that's a ridiculous curse that we're handcuffed with, because that doesn't make it good or better or anything. It's Canadians making stories and giving it, you know, a Canadian perspective to something, maybe because you might be have absorbed something here that affects your aesthetic eye or something like this, you know, the stuff like that. That is, but there's some of the stuff that we have in regulations here is just really crippling to the entrepreneur in every filmmaker. Let's face it, you have to be an entrepreneur as a filmmaker. You have to be an entrepreneur as a writer, and the trouble is that there are so many people between you, the artist, and the end market, that it's very difficult for you to go and get past all the racketeers that are really there unnecessarily between you and the end working thing. It's a tough gig to be in the film industry in any position. On one side, if you're working under the conditions of a Hollywood work day, the hours are extremely long and it's very unhealthy. We took on my shows. We figured out a way to work 4 days a week and have on the Romeo section, or on Intelligence actually, 4 days on, 3 days off. It was a miracle.
I did not know that.
For the entire series.
Wow. That is healthy.
Yeah, and 12 hours in the trucks, not 16 hours for the 4 days. Shorter. So we did it by being efficient in our storytelling, in our prep, in everything that we did. And I had been asking R.V. Lee Matanen, who was a line producer for many years, like 4 years on Da Vinci, if we could figure out a way to make every week a 4-day week, because when people had 3-day weekends, they came back to work so refreshed, and the 3 days on the weekend gives them 1 day to sleep, because you know, generally, you know, to recover from your work, you have a family day maybe, and you have a chore day. You know, you have those 3 days where you can actually have a decent family life. That's one of the big things, you know, about film life, is you never see your family, or your relationship, and health, all that kind of stuff. Things could improve, you know, very easily, because eventually schedules are forced now. You know, in many arbitrary ways, because people borrow money, and it's all about, you know, paying the interest. But a lot of these big studios, they borrow from themselves, their own bank. So it's, you know, one arm of a huge conglomerate is making money on another arm, and they're forcing long hours simply because they'll be saving on loan payments on this end. But you know, whatever. It's a kind of a confused way of operating.
I would like to know, I know we've been talking about working here, working in LA, working in New York. Selfishly, I would like to know, what advice would you give to actors right now under the current circumstances?
Well, I don't think it's different generally for performers, whether you're in LA, New York, Toronto, London, you know, Johannesburg, Berlin. It's, as a performer, it's a Scrabble. In London and in England, the structure of, for the life of an actor means that they generally are trained and encouraged to work in all mediums. So you have people doing voice work, you have voice actors, you have people who are doing a lot of stage work, they're doing, you know, an enormous amount of sort of going from role to role. Here, not so much, because our stage is so lame, and Vancouver is culturally not the thriving bed of theater productions where people can constantly see a lot of good actors getting a lot of training. It's just not enough of an audience there, and people like to be outside in Vancouver, and getting them into productions and stuff is a little more difficult. I think just generally it's a outdoor culture of Vancouver. Other places, you know, like Toronto, cold, New York, cold in the winter, a lot of people in the theaters and all that kind of stuff.
London raining all the time.
London, you know, I'm assuming that's part of the scene here. But I just think that you have to do what I know. You know, I know actors around town who are hard-working people because they got second, third, fourth hustles going on, and I think that that's the thing you got to do. I don't think there is a choice. You know, and when you do have the choice, it becomes. Often actors will make this say, listen, I just got a semi-regular on a TV show and it looks like it's going for another season, so I'm going to do some theater for a while because I can afford to do it, or it'll keep my chops and I'll do that in a high, or I'll do this. Or many actors take courses or teach courses or study something that is an aspect of their craft. And I think what people tend to do when they're not working and they're looking for creative outlets is they tend to do something that's related to the craft that they're not getting that work in. And I think that is the trouble, because it's a delayed reward when you're an actor. You're not hearing the applause right away, and you know, you're not going back on the next night and saying, why'd they laugh at the line last night and not tonight? I got to work on that. Or, you know, or somebody, you know, you don't get that whole, the working process, exercising the whole, you know, challenging your talent to answer the questions that a director can't answer, that only you as a cast member can provide to make something better or something. You don't get those opportunities. And if you don't get those opportunities, you're rusty when you go in for an opportunity, and or these other things. So, and there's nothing like, there's no pretend. Cameras rolling, that's not the same as, you know, you're on a show and the camera's rolling. It's just not the same. The stakes are different, and you may not respond to the tension on a set and the tension of everybody on the set, because the director's tense, or the producer's tense, or the writer's tense, or an actor's tense. You don't get those opportunities. You just roll with it, and hey, I'm shutting you out right now. you know, and that the ability, the skills you have to turn out the noise from everybody criticizing about everything anyway. It's just that's a signal. It's just all that, you know. Is you just have to keep hustling. It's the same thing as I do. I keep hustling. I can't get dejected. I was feeling blue the other day about a show that I thought that I'd written quite a while ago, that I thought, man, this thing is a killer, and everybody going, when's that thing going? It's a great script, man. Can we do that? Yeah, you know. And I feel blue about the work that I've missed, because it's just not been chosen, or it's not been quite the timing, or for whatever reasons, and that you've been counting on it and putting a lot of prep work in, and you think you're going to get it, and then they pull the plug on it, and you've invested time, money, research, all those kinds of things. It's like an audition, an extended audition that an actor might, you know, get several callbacks and stuff like this, and you're on that thing. You're not going to take anything else because this looks like it's going to go, and you don't want to be, you know, all over the place. You don't want to take this thing because this thing, the bigger thing, might. Endless kind of judgments of stuff, but you just got to find something that I think eases the anxieties of missing out, and at the same time gives the creative sustenance to you that you get from other cultures. You know, when you go to hear a band or go dancing or whatever it is that you do for that watch a movie like this, is to kindle the fire in the nerves and to keep the capacity going, because it's about the brain and it's about the unconscious, and it's learning about how to be creative and letting it flow, and lengthening that that moment in the morning where everything seems possible. Try to make, instead of that disappearing in 1 or 2 seconds, try to extend it a little, to maybe, a few more seconds. Try to get those bubbles of creativity before really self-criticizing yourself, because we're self-censors and we carry all criticism that we've ever heard in us. People don't need to criticize us anymore because it's like,
The inner critic.
you're not good enough.
One thing you and I were talking about earlier was self-hypnosis.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
Self-hypnosis. I can talk about hypnosis generally as I first got interested in it a very, very, very long time ago. And I went to one session because a friend of mine was going. And I said, oh yeah, but hypnosis, and I didn't really find, much about it. I said, man, maybe I just wasn't, ready to, or maybe it was the hypnosis method, but I left it alone for a couple of years. And then I went sideways into it by being introduced to a course on neuro-linguistic programming, which involves some similar stuff to hypnosis, sort of therapeutically. So I then stumbled into a bookstore that was selling a whole shelf of some psychiatrist in Vancouver had sold his whole library. And so I picked up a shelf of these $100 and $200 hypnosis and psychology and psychiatry volumes that were really all about hypnosis and the use of metaphors in self-hypnosis. So I got a real serious library, an ex-doctor's library, and I started to delve into it, and I started to pursue it a little more, and I went to a couple of more sessions with a couple of leading hypnotists. And then really the big thing that turned the things is I hypnotized my son, and he was very young, and he fell into a trance. I was doing this technique on him, and I was shocked. I said, like this, and I couldn't wake him up. I couldn't remember. It was one of those panics, like, how do I wake him up? I'm seriously, no, this is really happening. I jump up, I go, holy shit, and he's like this. And I'm going, what was the key? Where was I? Can't remember, like this. So I finally calmed down. He went, okay. Now I just went straight to as I calmed down, I will call you. I count backwards from 10 or 15, and slowly, and on count of 1, you will wake up. He woke up, boom, boom. He was like totally out. I went, wow, I can do that. And then I started with him to work on his baseball pitching, because we were in the backyard. And we was visualizing. We started visualizing a method of visualizing where and he became a great pitcher. He was throwing no hitters when he was 11 and 12, and that proved to me, just doing that exercise, I said, boy, if you really figure out the simple imagery that help, self-hypnosis or hypnosis is not, a stage performer. It's none of that stuff. It's really about getting into a trance. And we've all been in trance, and trances we have everyday trances. We're in and out of them. We're in and out of different mental states. But this is the classic description. This is, have you ever been driving a car and suddenly you're at your destination and you realize, how the heck did I get here? I don't remember making any of those turns. That's because you've been in a trance and you're working as you're on automatic. You have learned the automatic function. You may not even know ultimately it's a new route. It's not just like you're following an old route. It's just that you're there and you've somehow figured, and you're working your unconscious. Well, if you apply some of those principles, you figure out how do you put yourself in a trance, and how do you set a goal, and then end up at that goal without being aware of being in a trance or even going that route, because you can set your unconscious to the goal. So, for example, the driving example again is, you say, you know what, I got to be down here at Zara's studio, and I got to be down there at such and such a time, and I'm going. I have your address. So I'm going. Oh yeah. So I Google. Oh, that's it. I know where that is. So I put a picture of the building, and in my just in my unconscious, oh yeah, I'll be there. And then I said, well, how am I going to get there? I don't want to park down there. So I'm visualizing going, oh, that's a really shitty parking area. You know, it's hard to just roll in and get a couple hours of parking. And so I said, oh yeah. So I visualized the neighborhood, knowing the neighborhood, right? So that's in my unconscious now. And then I realized, you know what, I'll take the bus. And then I realized, oh, the bus will pull up. I know where I walk to pull up the bus. I visualize that. I'll just walk up there. And I get on the bus, and then oh, that'll be perfect. I'll get off there, and I know I'll get off right on there. Then I'll be late. And then then I walk to the bus stop just as the bus is going by me, and so I immediately say, you know, I'll walk over the bridge, and then I visualize just an adjustment to my route to walk to the right side of the of the bridge. So we're visualizing all the time, all our actions, and we're giving it to our unconscious. What you've got to do is you've got to have the faith that you visualizing something registers on in your unconscious, even beyond just directions to a destination. They are directions to a destination. If your destination is where you say, something's not impossible, but something that is flexible and something which is, for example, when I was going to pitch sessions and I learned some of these techniques, I visualized the end of the meeting, none of the process of the meeting. I didn't try to visualize details that I couldn't possibly, make happen by visualization or anything. But I would visualize the end of the meeting, where again it's vague. Not people aren't, but people are shaking my hand, maybe clapping me on the back, and just saying stuff like, or laughing or whatever. It was great pitch, great pitch. Love it. And that goal in itself, hearing that, it's because that's hypnosis, audibly, hearing people say, that was great, Chris, here's like this, and maybe feeling a nice warm handshake, or that is, and keeping that loose, but just feeling that, then I've programmed my unconscious and me and myself is to just operate with those instructions, which means I don't have to sweat in the meeting about performing a perfect pitch, because I've already instructed my unconscious. It's like, this is what we want to do. We don't want to worry about the details in this pitch. I want to be able to, like this. You and I did not rehearse any of these questions. No. We're just rapping.
Yeah.
And here's what I tell a lot of people about pitching, and it's not for beginners, because pitching now is, probably Zoom, or most people, or whatever, not in person. But what my philosophy has been, when you go in and pitch somebody, is you're actually in the pitch trying to get another meeting. So if that is what you're visualizing, is another meeting with that people, that means that they're interested in what you're doing. So it's like, often the pitch is about, that idea that you just pitched us, we've got something that's a little too close to it in development, but we want you back in here with another idea next week. Or, you know what I mean? So it's about your storytelling ability. And a lot of people don't have the storytelling ability in speaking or being in conversation. A lot of people are like, they're fantastic writers, don't speak a word. Ain't gonna say nothing. This interview would be like this.
I love your storytelling, and it's like, I think we met at VIF like over a decade ago.
Yeah.
I remember Paul Armstrong. He was like, you need to meet this Canadian legend, and I was, I remember that day. It was like a part of some VIF party off of Main somewhere.
I think where they were holding they used to hold Cinema Salon or whatever it was, like that, maybe, where Paul worked. I am, what I'm doing right now is because I feel really good, because I've had a good rest, and I've really been able to rejuvenate, because after I finished the last show that I did, and right after that I did a little movie, in England, a little British crime thriller, and that I was producing, and or helping to produce, couple of young guys that I had met, and I was flat exhausted, man. I was so tired, and I said, this is the tiredest I've ever been. Obviously, because I was older than I had been when I first started, and the exhaustion. Thank God. And then COVID came, and I just had a kind of forced vacation. No more pitching. A show fell through that I wasn't ready to keep pushing. And I've just over this past period taken rest, and I've been writing really, really small vignette stuff, and which just turns out to be just small sketches for other shows. I'm trying to get the DNA of 3 or 4 different shows, and really teasing out plot lines now, which is, okay, I really like this character. Now I'm starting to tease out how many plot lines, what would be the main kind of plot. And as you do that, you start to sort of follow your own interest. I'm not following the advice of anybody else who's saying, hey, Chris, when you write, remember that we've already got, 67 cop shows this season that we're developing. So if you could, make yours a little special, and maybe, have the cop, have a jetpack or something, and but so you're constantly trying to be original. Like I said earlier, people want uniquely the same. They don't want to. People who make decisions at the networks, they don't want to take the. If they make a show that's like every other show and it fails, then they have somebody to blame, because all these other shows exactly like it succeeded. But if you're the executive who approved the jetpack show, just because you wanted something different and it failed, you're the guy that's leaving you and your jetpack. You're out the door, and so you just have to get to know people, who you pitching to. Do as much homework as you possibly can by talking to other people who might have pitched to that network or have some success. Or I think people are often more accessible now, just online, because a lot of showrunners have fan rooms and stuff like that. There's a lot of advice out, but nothing. Guess what? Nothing beats real experience.
Yeah.
Real life. That's what got me ahead. It got me ahead quickly. I'd lived a lot of real life, and that's what Loki's saying.
Yeah.
Real life, man.
Loki's like, time to give me some treats. I remember when you gave me treats.
Yeah. He's a good dog.
Well, we can talk to you for hours, like breaking down everything. I know you're a wealth of knowledge, wisdom, and information. Not just about the film industry, but also how you've taken risks and believed in yourself and taken a chance on yourself and bet on yourself that I'm going to go ahead and do this. And that's what I find truly inspiring about you and our conversations. And I feel really honored that you would take the time to come out here and talk to us. Before I let you go, I would love to know, because our show is called The Inspired Life Vancouver, what inspires you in life?
Wow. Other people, and increasingly nature. Just I find rejuvenation, because as a writer, there's not only voices of all the people and friends around me and everything. I'm in cafes and all that kind of stuff. Getting around and outside to meet people and all that stuff. There's also a real need for input, obviously, from real experience, but there's a need to retreat and do the work. And here's the thing that I would advise to a bunch of writers who've out there slogging away, is it's not the amount of actual time that you spend at your computer writing in screenplay format. What it's about is you, in your hours, noodling with your thoughts to really try and understand what it is in human behaviors that you would like to display or spend time around or explore. And it's, so I get inspired by watching other people, listening to other people, this conversation, meeting people who I don't know. And just a general, I'm inspired generally by life and every day. I'm very lucky that way. I wake up every morning and I try to get to something creative, even before I start the coffee, and which means I can. And if I run into, depending on which way I walk through my house, I can run into any number of different musical instruments, or I can run into my notepads or my pen and paper, and depending on which one I feel at that moment, I can just stop. I can stop at a piano or a violin or a guitar, and because just really immediately before I let anything else into my consciousness of the day and things I might do, or walk the dog or something, is.
I think I need to give him dinner quickly.
You need like
yeah, can we come back to this point, Tiara?
Yeah.
Chris, what advice would you give to aspiring writers?
Can you do anything else? That because just my own experience was this: I was a musician, and I changed careers to the only career that was guaranteed to be more precarious than a musician, and that's a writer. And I think it's a very difficult profession. What has happened is that screenplays have somehow have replaced the novel in a lot of young writers' aspirations. What am I going to write? I'm going to write a screenplay. Everybody's writing screenplays. And they're teaching screenwriting in kindergarten, and as I understand.
Really?
No, I'm kidding. And but you're thinking, geez, I've started too late. But it's almost like that, and kids are learning to sort of tell stories that way. But and I think that there is an awful lot of people who think that writing a screenplay is easy, profitable, fun, and anybody who's been a writer for any length of time knows that it's not easy, seldom profitable, and sometimes fun. So it's not for the faint of heart, really, if you're a writer. But if you're a writer already and you're committed to it, and you really want to get into television stuff, just write your own stuff, study stuff, see what's like. I really opened up. I didn't take any courses or anything, but and I'm self-learning. But self-learning is the way. You got to fail. You got to give it to people, and not just your friends or your partner who are going to tell you it's either, depending on how they feel, either or they could just be working out their own aggressions on you. What do they know? They're, are they professional screenwriters? Do they have some? No, they're not. But they think they are. Everybody thinks they could write a movie, and because everybody used to think that they had the great Canadian novel in them, and now everybody thinks they have the great movie in them. And the fact is, you may, but it might take you 30, 40 years to find it, and maybe somebody won't pay you a lot of money for it. And we're hearing a lot of fear now about artificial intelligence, and writers have a very good reason to be extremely concerned about what that piece of technology will do to a lot of writers themselves, who will end up being forced to use it because everybody else is. All the people who are out there saying, "I will never do it. It's a violation of the like that." They're the ones that are home and are already doing it. They're all peeking at it, see how this works. Because people are doing it. Like people are like, "Have you tried that?" And they go, I haven't tried that. My son showed it to me. It's like he says, "I asked him to write a little things. It was incredible." And I sent it to my friend, and he said, "Who wrote this? This is really good." And I'm going, well, there you go. It could be really crappy, and that everybody just thinks they're a good judgment of writing. And so, like, no, it's AI. But over time, it's a danger to us all, and the possibility of making money off anything we might create. Because where it starts here, where AI, really gathers its information from everywhere and just says, here's the best of the best that we've been able to decipher, is it means that a fair rendering of a script is available to 8-year-olds. And I would guess that 8-year-olds are people who haven't really lived a life or have really anything much worth to say to us, as obviously we're full of media that has not much of worth to say to us. It's just going to escalate, I think, really. It's a fight to get the human touch in everything. It's been a fight for me to keep the human touch in everything I've written, because everybody is going the other way, because they, what they think they know what audiences want. And they say, look, audiences are watching all this stuff because they're telling us that they like this stuff. And I go, no, it's because that's what you're producing, and everybody's addicted to TV, and they'll watch anything. You know, if you're addicted to something, you're addicted to if you're addicted to anything, you'll take a poor version of what you're addicted to if it's the only thing available. And that's, in this case, it's a lot of really bad stuff. Television and media is the only stuff available because it's cheap, and everybody knows they'll buy the cheap stuff. And that's just sort of how we're going, just generally. So, writers, I would say, do what you can to remain content with the love of writing and the fact that it's good for you, it's good for your self-discovery. There's good things about writing, even if you never sell a thing. So it helps you, understand other people by writing about other people and trying to understand, writing a real character. You have to understand, so maybe you'll learn something about yourself, other people, and that'll help you in some endeavor, or just help you enjoy life more. Same with acting. Acting can bring you out of your shell and create a whole new, so writing does the same thing. It can open up your mind, give you, you can write yourself into, I was working with a writing partner on Vinci, who occasionally we said, okay, this begs for us to write something in which, be weepy. And we used to write to try to make each other cry. So I'm going to go in the other room and I'm going to come back with something to make you cry. So that, or we'd write, and or the other ways you try to recreate real situations. It's not just a fake, hey, we need some action here, let's make somebody feel emotional, have a breakdown or something. You really try to affect somebody, and you have a partner that you can write with who's open enough to be, that was, give you a genuine laugh or a genuine tear, and that's the closest thing at hand. Now you don't often have that. That's a rarity to have a really good writing partner, very rare, and to have fun working with them is rare as well. But the advice to writers is like, keep doing it. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Advice I give to myself. You're just having a lousy day. Keep going.
I love that. Keep going.
Yeah, right.
Keep going. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for taking the time.
It's been a pleasure.
Really appreciate it. I know Loki was really happy to see you here as well. We feel very inspired. It's truly an honor to, take the time to go through the memory lane. You have, like I said earlier, all this wisdom and knowledge, and not just as a writer, but as a showrunner, as a director, as a producer, and so much that can be learned from you, from creatives, on all parts of the film industry. I'm excited to see what you're going to work on next.
Yeah, me too.
No pressure.
I'm excited to do it.
Yeah, I'm very excited. And thank you all for watching. If you felt inspired, please do make sure to let us know.